Men don't need extra iron. Having iron in a multivitamin would expose a man to potentially iron toxicity.
We started with David Beckham. He was saying, hey, when I'm traveling all over the world, I've got this duffel bag full of supplements. Is there a way to simplify this and make this better?
A product is not a product if it really doesn't have the science behind it.
Meet Dr. Don Mussallem, integrative oncologist at Mayo Clinic, and David Vanderveen, a global wellness visionary. Together, they're shaping the future of health with IM8.
Co-founded by David Beckham and redefining what longevity means. Stay tuned to discover why the science behind IM8 truly matters.
There's no other product on the market that is bringing the science to the table. When you look at IM8, you have 92 ingredients, which would equal about 16 supplement products.
I'm already healthy. I eat my fruits and vegetables. Why do I have to take a supplement?
It never should replace getting adequate vegetable and fruit consumption in your diet. Whether someone's eating the perfect diet or the standard American diet, there's nutrient gaps.
Are you still getting all of the different ingredients that you need without taking these 50 pills?
I truly eat the perfect diet. So I thought, I don't think this is going to make a big difference in me. And I really did not think I would feel better.
Over 90% of people using the product are like, I feel an energetic benefit. But ultimately, it's how it affects your life and actually makes your life better. That is the only thing that really matters.
What are, in your opinion, top 3 biomarkers that you would want to see on someone who's taking a supplement?
I really love that question. And, for me,
welcome to another episode of a Healthy Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Sam Tejada. And today, as you guys know, we bring experts from all over the world to talk about health, wellness, and beauty. And today we have 2 guests that are behind a product that we're seeing all over social media. People are talking about it. There's buzz. And the reason why people are talking about it is that there's true science behind this supplement. And there's supplements out there. As you guys know, everyone's cutting corners, doing different things. Not on this one. So today we have the team from IM8. It's a product that's backed by David Beckham. It's his product. And we have the lead on the scientific advisory board and also the president of the company. We have Dr. Don Mussallem, right? Did I say that right?
You got it,
And then we
Sam.
have David Vanderveen.
Yeah,
We have
nailed it.
David Vanderveen. I'm horrible. I always chop up names.
Those
but you know
are
what?
tough names.
This is good that I'm just open about it. So, guys, welcome on the podcast.
Thanks,
Thanks
Sam.
for having us.
Great to be
Awesome.
here.
So, David, Dr. Don, you guys have an incredible story, both of you guys, on how you guys got involved with this product. So, yeah, David Beckham. Like, why is David Beckham getting behind a supplement product? Why?
I think that's a great question. David is a co-founder of IM8 with Danny Young, our founder, CEO of Prenetics, which is the parent company for all of this. And, David and Danny had met through mutual friends in Hong Kong. And David was fascinated with the science of Prenetics, which was a life sciences company in Asia, particularly some of the early cancer detection work we're doing with Dr. Dennis Lowe. And that got him asking, what could we do to simplify supplementation and nutrition? He says, look, I've always had access to the best healthcare, the best, training, the best nutritionists. How do we make that available to everyone? And so what Danny and David really set out to do was to create this baseline of nutrition for everyone with an all-in-one functional supplement that tastes great, that makes you feel energetic, and actually has some great ingredients in it.
Amazing. So, listen, a product is not a product if it really doesn't have the science behind it. Dr. Don, when they asked you to actually join the team, what were you thinking?
It was so exciting. So my first call with Danny, believe it or not, was a Zoom call at 4 a.m. I was heading to the airport. He's in Hong Kong. So I was like, oh, I wake up early. Let's just do this call while I'm in the back of an Uber. So we were both so energized that I said, hey, hold on. I'm going through security. I put my AirPod through security, picked it up, and we finished the call all the way until I got on the plane. I'm like boarding the plane and we're still talking. And then we're texting the whole way we're on the plane. We just had so much in common, and my passion started truly when I was a kid. I was just really fascinated with longevity and just optimization of the human experience and really to bring individuals through to flourishing. And that's what my practice is. And so really, this has been a gap in what I always wanted to do with my patients. And so when this became a possibility to join efforts with IM8, with the scientific rigor we have at Mayo Clinic, it was just a no-brainer. It's what we wanted to do. So really honored and excited to be in this position to develop the world's best supplements to support the human experience.
So let's talk about your experience with the Mayo Clinic, because the Mayo Clinic is a leader in the health and wellness industry overall, just in the clinical setting. So when you're taking that expertise that you have from that background, how are you applying that to this product?
Exactly. So my specialty at Mayo Clinic is integrative oncology and lifestyle medicine. And, at Mayo Clinic, we're seeing the world's sickest individuals. And many times folks acknowledge Mayo Clinic as being a place where people go when they're unwell. But we are masterful about taking the unwell person and bringing them through to retaining their vitality and then flourishing after. And so it is very important to us that we have solutions for our patients when it comes to optimal nutrition, helping our patients move, get exercise prescription, managing stress, social connections, avoiding, toxic exposures. So this was another one of those solutions that we were really enthusiastic about, particularly as we become really more active even in that healthy aging space. For so long, I've been at Mayo Clinic since 2000. I started my clinicals when I was in medical school. And I do remember back in 2000, it was a little bit more of a focus on the sick care, getting them better.
Right.
But over the last decade, decade and a half, it's really also fundamentally became quite a resource at Mayo Clinic for folks to come to us for healthy aging solutions. And though lifestyle is the goal, there are a lot of gaps in our lifestyle, and particularly, as you know, with nutrition. And so to solve that gap with nutrition, on top of the confounding stressors that we have with modernization of lifestyle, we need to have things like IM8 that can close those nutrient gaps and then potentially even enhance the ability for cellular health, mitochondrial health, energy protection, and beyond.
You hit a really good topic about lifestyle, and when you look at people's lifestyle, especially the things that we're putting in our body, the foods that we're eating, supplementation, in my professional opinion, is extremely important because a lot of our food are nutrients dense. They don't have the nutrients that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
So when it comes to utilizing a certain supplementation product, what's your opinion when it comes to including it for people who already take that proactive approach to the lifestyle, where they say, well, I'm already healthy. I eat my fruits and vegetables. Why do I have to take a supplement?
Sam, I love that question. And whether someone's eating the perfect diet or the standard American diet, there's nutrient gaps and there's no denying it. Unfortunately, with the standard American diet, 60% of that's ultra processed foods. So people just
Right.
aren't getting what they need in that situation. And that needs to be remedied by eating healthier. But even in the perfect world where someone is eating a healthy predominant plant forward diet where they're getting the vitamins and minerals you would think they would be getting from produce or from vegetables and fruits, because of monoculture farming, because of the pesticide exposure, we just don't have that nutrient density that we used to have in our produce. And I see that in my patients. I check these laboratory studies in both my patients that are on the standard American diet, as well as some of them eating the perfect diet. And I find so many vitamin deficiencies. But it's not just me. One of my colleagues who's an oncologist kept on seeing wound healing problems, and he checked vitamin C levels. And he was finding extremely low levels of vitamin C in our patients in
Wow.
the cancer center. That was actually not one of the vitamins I was regularly checking in my patient population because my patients are already on a very plant forward diet. That is what my specialty is in lifestyle medicine. But I was just really so actually proud of my colleague in the oncology space to think of checking a vitamin C, but also quite disheartened to know that we are seeing this amount of significance of vitamin and nutrient depletion. And that's not even speaking to the phytonutrients. We're not checking phytonutrient levels in most situations.
Right. Right.
So it definitely is a solution we need to have. The other problem is when folks go to the marketplace to buy their multivitamin, some of those multivitamins are just harmful with how they have been formulated.
Synthetically made, all kinds of processed things in it, right?
Precisely what
Yeah.
they're adding in terms of fillers. One of the little simple things, when we think about cellular health is the ability to methylate. If someone's eating a healthy diet, well, that's really where we need to start with
Right.
methylation. But there's many people that don't know how to take folic acid, for example, and do with it what they're supposed to do with it. So methylfolate should always be in a standard multivitamin formula, but very few of them have that. Of course,
Right.
IM8 has that. Same thing with methyl B12. You really want those methyl donors when you think it's just some of those basic B vitamins, but it goes so far beyond just keeping it simple. I personally do not like iron in multivitamins. Men don't need extra iron.
Right.
If you are iron deficient, you are losing blood somewhere in most situations, or you're just not eating a balanced diet. So things like that, having iron in a multivitamin would expose a man to potentially iron toxicity, and iron is an oxidative agent. So those are just three very simple examples. When you look at IM8, you have 92 ingredients to help to close those very basic nutrient gaps, which would equal about 16 supplement products. So that was David Beckham's one ask was, I just need a one-stop solution, that is easy and quick and convenient without having to open up all these different
So let
bottles.
me expand on that. So when you're talking about these different nutrients, like you said the methyl, B12, and you also said the methylfolate.
Yeah.
There's other versions of B12 as well. Why go the methylated version?
Again, a small subset of people, and it's a wider percentage of people than we realize, have a gene mutation called MTHFR, and they're not able to actually absorb the B12 as well as they should without that methyl donor group. When it comes to B12 period, some people have a harder time if they're swallowing a pill. So sometimes if they're letting it even dissolve in the mouth as it's going through, there's more digestibility even with using the powders or the liquids with
Right.
that B12 supplement. So you have the methylcobalamin, and that is exactly what's in the product with IMA.
Amazing, amazing. David, one of the things that Doc mentioned is what David Beckham wanted to do with a product and make it kind of like a one-stop shop. And when you start watching a lot of these guys in the longevity space, the biohackers, right? You watch people like, for example, Brian Johnson,
Sure.
right? And all of a sudden, it's like you have this like drawer of pills and this and that, and anyone who wants to just kind of take that first step to take control of their health, they see that and they're frightened. It's like, I'm not taking 55 pills first thing in the morning and then another 55 in the evening. So why put something together the way that you guys did,
Sure.
right? And then the question to follow that as you answer it is, are you still getting all of the different ingredients that you need without taking these 50 pills that you see some of these other people doing?
It's a great question, and I'll let Dawn jump in on some of this too. But I think from our perspective as a brand, we wanted to have something that was simple and elegant and was really going to drive compliance. I owned an energy drink and sports nutrition brand previously, and our whole focus was total experience.
Right.
We wanted to help people get sugar out of their diets. We wanted to help people get essential amino acids into their diet, as a couple examples of things we were doing. But we realized if people didn't enjoy it, they weren't going to use it. And so one of the big, because you have to build a habit, and if you don't like it, you probably won't. So one of the big keys with this is, we wanted people to find deep enjoyment. People who are polyglots, who speak 11 or more languages, have one thing in common.
What's that?
It's not how big their brains are. It's not how well they memorize. It's, do they enjoy learning language?
Right.
If you enjoy it, you'll figure it out, right? And so we wanted this to be on the counter, not in your fridge. We wanted this to be something that tasted good, that you didn't gag on when you were drinking it. And we wanted you to feel really good after you took it. There's no stimulants in it. And Dawn and I were talking about this because she's always incredibly energetic. And some days I am, but I'm inspired by Dawn. I'm like, if we could bottle what she has inside her, I'll give you some, but I'm gonna have some too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We'll split it.
Yeah, we'll split it. Yeah. But it's she always has amazing energy. But I think you were feeling it, Dawn. I was feeling like, and I'm like, what am I feeling? Because it felt like it was starting in my gut. It was like this sort of deeper cellular positive energy. But it felt so good, and so it's in our IRB study we're doing right now on consumer response. But over 90% of people using the product are like, I feel an energetic benefit, and there's nothing in there that on its own that would show that. But synergistically, we have a really clinical dose of pre, pro, and postbiotics, so that's going to activate your gut. And I think it was Dawn and Dr. Dev Koda from Cedars-Sinai were saying, probably there's a gut metabolite being activated here. So we're studying 230 gut metabolites now with artificial guts to see what's being activated, finding some interesting things. And then we have CoQ10 and MSM that are probably being activated. Dawn may have some other ideas there. I'm not the scientist, but there's some really great synergistic benefits from having all of these things in one basket. And obviously we get a lot of anecdotal responses because different people have different deficiencies, and so they're going to have different responses to what they feel. Almost everyone feels an energetic difference. We were just with David Beckham here at the Owner's Box at an Inter Miami game about a week ago, and one of the top women's tennis player was there, who we found out had been using the product for a month.
Oh, really?
And I was talking to her partner, who also helps manage her career, and he said, she made me start taking it because she's feeling so much more energy. It's changing her ability, how she's training,
Right.
and her endurance. So I think that's a big part of it. It's just you feel great, you feel the benefits, you feel the energy. It makes you want to use it. Dawn was telling me how she had a little extra IM8 on the way down here as she was driving down today.
Yeah,
Right?
I do. It is really exciting, and I really did not think I would feel better when I started it. It was probably about 6 months ago. I've been on it now. Well, probably longer,
By the
actually,
way,
about 8 months.
same. We're both cynical. We've tried everything, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and we take really good care of ourselves. I mean, being a lifestyle medicine physician, I truly eat the perfect diet. So I thought, I don't think this is going to make a big difference in me, but I'm going to go ahead and take it. And I thought, whoa, I run marathons. David trains for marathons with us. We have a lot of fun together, seeing who's running faster in any one given day.
Dawn's
despite
running
our busy
faster.
schedule.
Yeah.
But it really fuels me, and I travel extensively, and it's keeping me really healthy. But the synergy, even in the greens, or you could say the reds, because it's a red color, has a beautiful acai flavor. The smell is lovely, which even that separates it. That for me wouldn't be my motivation, would be taste and flavor. But man, we nailed it with taste and flavor, and even the color is very beautiful, a pretty red color. But the super greens, or the reds formula in this, was well thought out. It never should replace getting adequate vegetable and fruit consumption in your diet, but it can help to support that. Then we have the adaptogen blend. When it comes to stress, having a nice, balanced, subtle, and I use that word subtle for a reason, adaptogen blend is very important. Now, that brings me to the next point, that we are NSF certified, which is critical. So this is going to test for the heavy metals, the molds, the microplastics, but most importantly, that dosing accuracy.
That's amazing.
There was a recent brand, very well-known brand, many women, many of my patients were using it, and they just unfortunately experienced liver failure in one of their patients, likely because of the high-dose ashwagandha. Many of these particular substances, EGCG, which is the epogallocin catech 3 out of green tea, what we saw with that as well is it has this very narrow therapeutic window. So you can help a patient feel better, but if you overshoot it, you're going to be really affecting that liver. And all of a sudden you have a bunch of different herbs interacting with each other, and that's a disaster. And this is why mainstream medicine is so cynical with supplements, because there's no standardization like there are with prescription medicines. So our way of standardizing is with NSF, and it feels so good to have that backing. And that is why Mayo Clinic, in this partnership with IM8 to set this research forward, we are so happy to have this solution to continue with IM8, as well as future product development in that space.
So this is something really important for us to highlight here, the whole NSF thing, because, we live in a very toxic world, and there's been a lot of talk about, our environment, the foods that we're eating,
Heavy metals.
heavy metals, the different dyes in the food. And it's been all over the news recently, right? The food here versus other countries like Canada or Europe. So when it comes to these heavy metals, this can have a very negative impact to your overall health, right, Doc?
There is no doubt this is something we really need to be mindful of, in the molds as well. People underestimate exposure to molds in many of these sorts of products, particularly when you start to bring those greens formulas into it, as well as the herbs, particularly the Ayurvedic herbs, some of these adaptogens, some of the mushroom blends. All of this is very, very important. So the science and the purity control that NSF brings is very important. David had mentioned the science, and that's another area that there's no competitor. There's no other product on the market that is bringing the science to the table. And so with this original research, we see that 90% enhancement in energy and 81% improvement in endurance and 67% improvement in gut health, which is significant. And then about a 61% to 62% improvement in hair, skin, and nails, which again, I just shared that other hair, skin, and nail formula is the one that caused this unfortunate woman to have this liver failure, which was really, really concerning.
Yeah, and a lot of these products, like one of the things you mentioned is the different ingredients that could even cause mold. And I think people have to understand that it's not just synthetic products that can bring the mold in there. Mold can actually come from natural type of ingredients that are going into the product, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something where I think, it sometimes is a little confusing, I think, for a consumer, because they're like, I don't want anything chemical. And you're like, well, if you're actually a scientist, like, well, everything's a chemical. And water's a chemical, right?
Right.
So you kind of have to, pick your terms. And I think these days things get kind of batted around. Like people say clean ingredients. And I'm like, okay, well, does that mean simple? Or, because I think to your point, I used to run a beverage alcohol laboratory in the Napa Valley. We did a lot of research with UC Davis, and, toxins can occur naturally.
Right.
Right. And if you're like, for example, when you're not using like a pesticide or herbicide on the leaf, then the vine and the fruit have to fight the toxin somehow, and they will naturally fight the toxin with toxins they develop inside, right, and that get into the fruit. And if you're concentrating and stressing the fruit, you probably want to limit those natural toxins. Probably not that harmful for somebody, but when you're comparing to washing off a pesticide or herbicide, it starts to look, in some cases, a pesticide or herbicide might actually be a better solution than concentrating natural toxins inside the fruit.
Of course.
It's not everything. I'm not saying across the board, but that was one example, right? And so some of these things are a little confusing to a consumer because they're like, well, what should I, if you're putting it in your mouth, I think you probably want to go organic. If you can wipe it off, I think there's more room to debate it. But that was something that we just like to, we're looking at from the original ingredients. We use Eurofins to give us a third-party assessment on, is this what we think it is before we even put it into a batch, and then after we put it all together, blend it, and at the batch and then again at the packaging, we have NSF, which is the gold standard for for certification. Make sure that what we say is in there is in there, that nothing extra is in there, and then we even go another level and go NSF certified for sport, so that professional athlete, any athlete can feel comfortable that there's going to be no banned substances in there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. David, let me ask you something. So when you look at the product that's, David Beckham is part of it.
Right.
I know from being in the industry for so many years, sometimes when you have an athlete behind a product, people kind of feel like, well, I don't want to be an athlete. So let's talk about some of that stigma that might be behind a product where people think, well, this is just for the person who's, very athletic. This product is for the
For
regular
everybody.
Joe Schmo, for
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah.
right? And it's a product that's good for longevity. So how can you, obviously you're a branding expert, being in the different supplement businesses and everything
Sure.
else. How would you address that?
Yeah, look, we have athletes who love it. I would say it's for athletes too.
Right.
But it's not designed necessarily for athletes. I think, we started with David Beckham, who was a professional athlete. He's an icon for sport. He's an icon for fashion. He's an icon for UNICEF. He has a very broad brand that serves the world, I think, very well. He was saying, hey, when I'm traveling all over the world, and I've got this duffel bag full of supplements, is there a way to simplify this and make this better?
Right.
And so that's where we started. Something that, of course, would be good for David Beckham, but that we could extend to the rest of the world. We formulated it for people as petite as Dawn and as big as me, right? Where I think we can all feel really comfortable with what we're consuming. And sometimes I might have 2 a day just because I'm a bigger person. So I might have one in the morning and then one later in the afternoon.
Right.
But the idea is that we cover that baseline of nutrition. We're going to get your gut activated. We're going to get those 16 supplements that you're typically taking, into your system in a way that's really going to be usable. And I think the bigger thing is the synergistic effects. You mentioned Brian Johnson, who's, really causing a lot of discussion around supplementation and what's in the supplements. And I think some really healthy discussion. He's also putting his body through some things that, I think are good to question, because a motorcycle isn't defined by the pieces and parts. It's defined by the whole thing running together, right? So you can't define a motorcycle by a spark plug. And you can't just run the whole, it's not just gasoline, right? You've got to have it all working together in harmony.
Right.
And I think that's where the synergistic benefits are something that we really have to pay attention to, like Dawn was talking about, where we want to make sure, one, we're doing no harm, and two, that we're getting some surprising benefits for different people with different need states. When I was talking to this #1 tennis player, she was using it for the energetic benefits and the endurance benefits. Her partner, who's also a former pro, he told me, I'm sleeping better. Those two things would seem to be at odds, but they had different need states. And so their body's responding differently. And I think that's one of the benefits of having such a broad supplement is we're not going to pin down every benefit. We're going to see a lot of anecdotal differences. People who have blood sugar regulation issues are saying, hey, I'm seeing a big impact in my blood sugar regulation.
Absolutely.
Probably from the fiber, probably from a number of things. CoQ10, Dawn will have better ideas than I do on this. But when we see a broad spectrum of people who are using it coming back to us and saying, hey, this is working for me. Why is it doing that? That gives us the opportunity to then, we've had the observation. now we get to dig in and do some science and figure out why that's happening. I think that's what's been really exciting for us.
Absolutely.
And so excited and so confident in the product that we're doing 100 of our healthcare workers at Mayo Clinic with a randomized controlled study.
Oh, wow.
And so there's going to be extensive laboratory analysis during this time, both pre and post. Again, it'll be randomized with a placebo. The placebo, we're going to go ahead and use the beetroot extract, which,
Okay.
that's a nitric oxide stimulator. So
Right.
you're automatically in the placebo group, going to probably make those people a little bit healthier, but there still will be enough of the statistical gap. I'm not worried about that. But there's no other company that's been willing to invest that amount of financial effort towards proving the product is good, probably because they're a little concerned that a randomized controlled study won't show the benefit. What's really exciting is Mayo Clinic, in partnership with the military, designed this wearable device. And we're going to use this wearable device as part of this study with a particular cohort.
Interesting.
And it'll measure heart rate variability, EKG, with age monitoring.
With age monitoring.
So it's going to be very cool.
What's the age monitoring?
Yeah, and I have to
haven't
be
heard that
cautious, like speaking too much
much?
to it
Okay.
until it's like actually published. But
Well, the
because it's
thing
in
is
collaboration
that I'm
with the
like
military.
really big into wearables. I'm more in my
Yes.
Oura Ring right now.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
actually writing a book
it's-
called Your Wellness Data that I've interviewed a lot of the people that produce wellness datas, and I'm interviewing
Yeah.
people from Oura Ring and the Whoop and everything else. So
We'll
you
be
you caught
back.
you caught my
we're
my
gonna be
attention
back
on
with
this.
this.
My brother-in-law's the lead designer for Oura Ring.
Really?
Yeah. lives
Oh,
in
that's
Amsterdam.
amazing.
I didn't know that.
That's amazing.
Very cool. The things you learn on a
Yeah.
podcast. That's great.
Well, I definitely got to
back
talk
and
to you about
I
that
like
because that's one of the ones that I really want to make sure that's in the book. So, I got the guys from Pinoy with the VO2 Max, Prenuvo, a full body MRI, a few
Right.
different big labs, because that's something that I think that talking about this stuff, when it comes to your actual wellness data, this is what allows people to really take control of their health,
Right.
right? Being able to understand how your body's performing. So I want to hear more about what you're talking about
Yeah.
with this randomized test with 100 coworkers, the health workers, et cetera.
Yeah, we're really, really excited about it. And, we know in healthcare right now, this is a time of really high burnout. Healthcare workers are working long hours. We want to have a subset of that population, definitely overnight workers that are more challenged even with their own scheduling. So it's going to be a very provocative test, but we stand behind the product and the product development and feel very confident. We'll be looking at metabolic markers. And so really excited, and we'll share those results with you when we get the study completed.
So as of right now, are you guys checking any biomarkers specifically related to the product and how the body would perform?
So on ourselves, we have done that, but this will be the first randomized controlled study with that advanced profile of biomarker analysis that has been done for IM8. And when we look at other companies out there, I have not seen any out there that have ever done a randomized controlled study
Right.
on this caliber. So it's very exciting.
What are, in your opinion, some of the top 3 biomarkers that you would want to see on someone who's taking a supplement?
I really love that question. And, for me, vitamin D is a big one. So vitamin D deficiency, I see suboptimal vitamin D levels. You can really close the vitamin D deficiency gap, definitely with the IM8. We'll probably move most people to a sufficient level with the current dosing that is in it. You also don't want to overshoot vitamin D, particularly if someone has a history of kidney stones. So you have to walk that fine line. You asked about dosing. When you select a dose for a multivitamin, you are looking at the population as a whole. So you don't want to go so high that all of a sudden a small subset is going into toxicity, right? You have to find for the average medium to be sure that it's first do no harm. But the vitamin D dosing is 35 milligrams, which is about, getting close to about 1,200 IUs of the vitamin D3, which is very nice. The competitor to IM8, the greens, doesn't have any vitamin D in it. So it's very nice that we have the vegan vitamin D that is in the IM8. So that would be number one. Number two is one that's going to surprise you, and it's actually beta carotene levels, and it's something that I check in my patients. And with the REDS formula, I anticipate that we'll pull beta carotene up. There's some really nice research from the early 1990s that showed that beta carotene levels are a wonderful surrogate for a health-related quality of life. And so it's something that I've been following for over the past decade in my patient population, and there's a very strong correlate. So I'm really excited to go after that finding to see pre and post intervention. If we see, as we drive up that beta carotene level, that we also see that health-related quality of life goes up in conjunction with that. And then, of course, we'll be checking hemoglobin A1Cs, we'll be checking ApoBs, and the traditional metabolic profiles that you would expect to also see some benefit from.
Right.
So,
Very
and
interesting.
then all of the basic labs and the vitamins and minerals like zinc and selenium, I see very frequently deficiencies in both of those particular minerals whenever I'm checking labs in my patients
The,
nowadays.
the type of micronutrients test that you would do on your patients, what type of micronutrients test is it? Is it in the whole blood, or is it looking at intracellular? What's been absorbed? What is it specifically?
It actually depends on what the micronutrient is that we're measuring. I do all of my labs through Mayo Clinic at this time. We are looking at even outside labs as part of IM8, as part of our longevity center, it even doing at-home testing with partners globally
Nice.
to even look at some of these different analyses, because I do have the majority of ours coming in on whole blood is what
Okay.
it's, but when it comes to, for example, magnesium, you want that more on red blood cell. So we do want to be mindful of where we are drawing this from when we're doing this
Of
particular
course.
testing.
Yeah.
This laboratory testing will all be done at Mayo Clinic, actually in-house.
Okay.
We want everything to have that tight quality control. And as we're bringing in these outside labs to even consider other analyses, we will always compare them to our in-house labs. We prefer to do
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Great
Does
question.
the IM8 product have K2 in it? By any
It
chance?
does. It actually does have K2. That is something on Reformula. We're probably going to actually go ahead and maybe pull it up a little bit even. But right now, the dose is about 35 milligrams, micrograms. And so happy with where that dosing is at.
That's amazing.
Again, when it comes to K2, particularly in people that are not getting any dairy fat or high fat animal products, which in my patient population, the cancer population, most of them are plant predominant, they definitely need K2. And the role of K2 is to kind of shuttle that calcium where it needs to go into the bone, so it's not out there free floating around to cause atherogenic or calcified coronary arteries is the biggest concern
And it
with
goes
that.
very well in conjunction with the vitamin D, right? And it's one of those things that in the world of functional medicine, we're always preaching, hey, if you're taking vitamin D, make sure you're taking it with the K2. So that just shows you the type of thought that has gone through into the product.
In the magnesium, we have a very high quality magnesium that is in this particular product. Magnesium deficiency is probably affecting over 90% of Americans.
Everyone should take magnesium.
Everyone needs magnesium.
Everyone.
Exactly.
It's one of the things, like anytime I take any classes with any of these, top doctors in the functional medicine space, they're like, if there's one thing you have to take, it's magnesium. It's good for your gut. It's good for your digestion, your circulation. It's good for your sleep. It's good for like everything.
And it depends on the form you're using. And this is where thought needs to be put in it, because many supplement companies use magnesium oxide, which is going to stay in the gut and it's going to cause GI upset and you're going to excrete it and you're not getting it in to the blood where you need to get it
Right.
so it can go to the cellular level. And so it was over 15 years ago, I did my first magnesium study at Mayo Clinic with hot flashes, and it was with magnesium glycinate. And, people originally thought I was a little crazy. Like, why are you looking? And sure enough, yes, I was seeing this regular trend with my patients that they were feeling better, more relaxed at night, and their hot flashes went away. I wasn't giving it to them for hot flashes, but all of a sudden they started coming in
Wow.
and saying hot flashes are gone. So it's the first thing we use at Mayo Clinic for hot flash management, actually, is magnesium glycinate. The magnesium glycinate is beautifully absorbed, so it's not causing the problem of hanging out in the GI tract, causing all that GI distress
Right.
that the common magnesium citrates and magnesium oxides are doing. It's not to say that people can't take those other forms. It's just we want to use a more bioavailable form so it goes where it should be going.
Of course. Doc, let me ask you this. A lot of the listeners and viewers of the podcast, they take control of their health and they're taking all kinds of different supplements. How do you deal with people that want to start utilizing or trying the IM8 product, but have already these drawers of vitamins and minerals and everything else? Because
Yeah.
most people, in their heads, they're going to say, well, I don't want to overdo it, right? I don't want to just supplement to supplement and just take a bunch of other supplements. Like, is there a transition that people should do when they want to introduce a new product like IM8?
I switch them immediately over, and they are so excited not to have to take those pills anymore. So it's really been exciting. I had a patient recently, it was very cute. She had just finished her breast cancer treatment. Her son was visiting, and he brings out this basket, and I'm not kidding. It was probably 75 bottles.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I have a solution for you. Once your mom started with
One bottle.
radiation, your mom can start this, but you need to start it now. And so he sent me a message back, and he's really excited he received it. And so he's going to be starting that. But he was so happy because he travels, and he's like, you're kidding. He's like, I didn't know this would be an option. So yes, I think it's something that the patients that I've worked with and their families are really happy to get rid of all those bottles. Wives are so happy that they don't have to have all those bottles on their countertop anymore with all the clutter. So that's nice as well. And it saves money. When you're buying 16 different bottles, that is very expensive investment when you're buying that many bottles. So it's nice to have one-stop shop.
And Doc, you're just extremely passionate with what you're doing, and you could just feel the vibration, the energy that comes off of you. And you have your own success story. I mean, you're a survivor yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that because I think that's part of why you're so passionate about helping people take control of their health.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Sam. And you're exactly right. You know, my purpose in life is really to help others attain their vitality during chronic illness, massive health adversity, and then flourish after. And I've been able to just, I think, really elegantly demonstrate that. And it just is truly blissful to be at this point in life to be able to see the same thing in my patients.
Right.
Because I'm just one person sitting here, but I see this same level of vitality in my patients. But it was a few weeks into medical school, I wasn't feeling well, and I was healthy my entire life. My parents raised me very healthy. It was just,
Wow.
we loved it. As 4 years old, like I shared with you, I loved longevity medicine. I loved being healthy. My favorite childhood memory was truly going to the health food store. So I was just this really unique child, but I would read health extensions in the 7th grade. So
Really?
I was really into this stuff early on. So when Danny called me at 4 a.m., I'm like, I'm your girl. There's no one else. No one can touch me. Trust me. So it is super exciting. And selfishly, I get to help create and co-create, you know, the solutions that I've been dreaming of for my entire life. But wasn't feeling good and couldn't figure it out. And I saw several doctors and they said it was even in my head by the time I saw the third
Really?
doctor.
Wow.
So I collapsed on my way home from medical school and I was diagnosed with stage 4 diffuse large B-cell lymphoma.
Wow.
I was given 3 months to live without treatment. This was in 2000, and 20 months to live with treatment. I had chemo, a bone marrow transplant, radiation, and I was cured. And then unfortunately though, in 2003, after having very advanced treatments, this was before the rituximab, which is a little more of a targeted therapy for lymphomas, was available. They had to do radiation right to my chest because I had a 16-centimeter mass that was wrapped around my heart and compressing my great vessels. That's why I collapsed. I couldn't get any blood up to the brain.
Wow.
So obviously the radiation had to go right to the heart. So shortly after my treatment, I went into cardiogenic shock and I was diagnosed with advanced heart failure with an ejection fraction of 8%.
Wow.
So I lived with heart failure actually for 18 years.
18 years.
From the year 2003. And during that time, I had a near-death experience. In 2016, I had a cardiac arrest with an asystole and a 4-minute near-death experience. Following that, that was in 2016, they just no longer could really help my heart with any other procedure. So I was listed for heart transplant. And I was given the gift of life in 2021, a heart transplant on February 5th.
Wow.
So
That's
it's pretty
amazing.
exciting. It is incredible, you know. So I lived 18 years and I still really, I think, had a normal vitality. I did pretty well, but life was so hard. I mean, I was like, I was just living with such resistance. I didn't realize it until now.
Wow.
And now my life is effortless. It's just so easy. And so I figured, how could I really help to convey this message of how important it is.
God has a plan for you.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it
so
really is.
gifted.
I mean, that's
It's
amazing.
such a blessing.
It is.
It really is.
And you're doing it. You know,
Yeah.
you're taking that plan. You're making your mission out of it. So
Well, it's just been a joy. It's been a
Yeah.
joy. And I thought to myself, you know, sometimes you have to do something extraordinary to have people listen. And so I said, I'll run a marathon on my 1-year heart transplant anniversary because no one had done that.
Wow.
So, but as I'm, you know, coming out of my heart transplant, you know, it took me a few days before they can even extubate me. I was very sick going into the transplant. I thought, well, you may have promised something that is not going to happen. I couldn't even walk. My calf muscles were indented. I was so deconditioned. I was in the hospital for a month after my transplant. And I just, every moment I could after the transplant in the hospital, I would walk. I would ask the nurses, hey, can you unhook me? Can I walk? Those poor nurses, they are just saints, I'll tell you. They helped me probably every hour get out of that bed to just keep on walking and walking and walking. And I kept on doing that more and more and started kind of trotting and then jogging and running. And so I ran a full marathon on my 1-year heart transplant anniversary.
Amazing. That is amazing.
It was
I love
amazing.
It.
Yeah.
And David, you run too, right?
Yeah.
I do. I 30 years ago, I used to be more competitive. I decided this year that I wanted to change things up, and you need a big, hairy, audacious goal to change things up typically. So
I love it.
I said, you know, I'm gonna do a marathon again, and
So-
I'm back into it. Yeah.
That's amazing. So I'm looking to get get into running. So our producer here, Los, he's got
Amazing.
a running club. It's called No Sleep Running Club,
Oh,
based
great.
here
Great
out
name.
of Miami,
Yeah.
which he has a lot of
Oh.
celebrities that they get together and people in the community and they go running. And
Wow.
you know, they're doing, what is it, Los, the jelly roll thing over here on the West Coast?
Oh yeah, that's his loser 5K, whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard about that. Sounds exciting.
Oh, it's
So-
amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, after the show, we
Yeah.
definitely got. I want you guys to see what he has going on, and you know, and
Yeah.
it's something that we've been following closely. You know, I've been following closely with Los because he's a big part of the team.
Great.
And hearing you guys that you guys run, you know, maybe it's something we all do together one day.
We
you
are
know?
going to do this.
I love
Yeah.
that. I'm
This is
so
great.
like it's funny. There's a surf. So I'm live in Laguna Beach primarily. It's where a lot of surf brands come out of Stussy and all these brands, Quicksilver and Billabong, et cetera, landed in the U.S. there, and a lot of these brands are now transitioning to run clubs.
Yeah.
Which I mean, obviously the people like yesterday I was telling Don, I went for a 7-mile run or 6-mile run and then worked out in the gym and I was running home and there were amazing waves. So I went for a surf for a couple hours
That's
and I
pretty
said I was
cool.
exhausted
Love
by
it.
the end of it. But I think that's kind of the fun of it is people are starting to realize you can't just do one thing. Even just
Yeah.
running, at my age, I'd probably waste away and get a little thin. So I'm, going to the gym, I'm doing some resistance training, obviously surfing still because I love that.
Right,
And then, ski and run. And I think that combination, it gives you that functional muscle. One of our athletes, Ken Rideout, who's in his 50s, he's won the Gobi, he's won these ultra marathons. He's got this Massachusetts accent, which is amazing. But he's like, why are people just working out? Like, what are they going to win? Best in the gym? Like, and
Yeah.
you see some of that on Instagram where I'd much prefer like working out for something that you're going to deeply enjoy doing
Right.
in nature, right? Which
Yeah.
was the fun
Yeah.
of running and the fun of surfing, et cetera.
Yeah, and my whole
Yeah.
thing has always been like going mountain biking. I love
Yeah.
just going out, being in nature,
Being on
and
a
just
trail,
getting on
yeah.
that. You're getting on the trails and just connect with nature,
Absolutely.
and just be out there, getting the heart going.
I
So,
agree.
but amazing stuff, amazing stuff. So, right now we have a big movement that's happening called the MAHA movement, Make
Yeah.
America Healthy Again.
Great idea.
How does everything that you guys are doing fit into the whole MAHA movement? And what do you guys think about the MAHA movement?
For me, my practice is food as medicine. So for me, it fits perfect. We are also working on a regenerative farm project at Mayo Clinic for this very reason, to help not just have a solution for the micronutrient deficiencies, these nutrient gaps, but also to help. And this is in partnership with Danny and Prenetics and IM8, that in support of what we really want to do beyond this is, hey, let's try to figure out how can we make the produce better. So
Right.
we're doing an amazing project at Mayo Clinic. It's in development at this point. That is AI technology driven regenerative farming. So more to come on that. Again, a lot of this stuff is still in conversation that we are really excited to make these major announcements. It's a little too early to make all the detailed announcements, but we are really excited to have this partnership and ongoing support with IM8 in this space.
No, I think that's right. I mean, it's a holistic approach. There is no silver bullet. I wish I could say that IM8 was a silver bullet, but it's really not, right? It's a component, and we need to look at the whole person. I think, you've both been talking about that really well. When I lived in Germany, we noticed that, things that are what they call bio or organic, we take these carrots home, and I've never seen a carrot go bad in the United States of America, but carrots will go bad in your fridge after, maybe a couple weeks in Germany, right? And I think we live in France part of the year now too, and I can eat bread in France. I don't feel bloated. I don't put on weight. It just feels good.
Right.
But they don't have the same modified grains that we do.
Yeah.
It's baked fresh where you get it. There's not a lot of preservatives in it. I think there's a whole movement to get back to just eating better and finding more nutrient dense foods and finding ways to grow it better. So we're getting what we think we're getting in the fruits and vegetables and the whole grains and the proteins that we're taking. But I think all of those things work together. And look, we've got to move our bodies. We've got to eat better. We've got to get the sleep. And we were talking about Oura Ring. I mean, I've lost 2 of them. I've got to get a third one now because I take them off when I surf and I don't know where they go. But the thing that I noticed, and I'm now in my 50s, was my sleep wasn't always easy to get. And when you wear an Oura Ring or some kind of a Whoop or some one of these devices, it's going to tell you that you're not sleeping well. And it doesn't necessarily fix it, but it brings it to our attention. And I think,
Right.
the things that we measure, we manage, right? And so the more that we can measure things, we're spending a lot of time with Function Health, talking to them about what they're doing. They
Dr.
don't
Mark Hyman, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
Mark
great,
Hyman and the whole team there. And I think look, what I love about Function Health is they're helping people get not only a baseline measurement, but ongoing measurements.
Right.
Because a baseline will tell you what you did in the past, but it won't tell you how you're interacting with your environment and your nutrition as you move through life, right?
Right.
And if anyone who's ever gone to see a doctor, you know, you're going to have your blood pressure measured and you're going to have your cholesterol measured and all of those key markers. You probably want to make sure that you're on your best behavior the night before,
Yeah.
right? And you probably want to make sure that you're not having a couple shots of espresso before you sit down in that chair to have a blood draw or have your blood pressure taken.
Right.
There's a lot of those things. There's a lot of those environmental factors that if you're only taking one snapshot at one time, it's not necessarily a great indicator of your overall picture. And so it's getting those recurring, you know, coming into a longevity clinic and getting those regularly updated measurements where you can start to see the impact and start to see the difference that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be drinking all the time. That was a big one for me. I was a very good social drinker and still am, but I've learned that I probably need to just drink a whole lot less.
Yeah. And you think that being able to actually see that data and trending it
Totally
has changed your mindset?
for me, it has because
right.
I'm looking at. I start to realize how important sleep is, how much better I feel when I have a great night's sleep, as an example, when I'm hydrated well. You know, when I drink my magnesium when I have a magnesium drink that I like in the morning. But when you're well hydrated, when you sleep well, when you're eating well, when you're not partying all the time,
right,
you just feel better, right?
Yeah.
And I think you start to realize, you know, yeah, those things were fun when I was younger, maybe for a period of time, but it's not a way to live. And so it starts to help you see the benefits and the difference. I like to, you know, we're very lucky living in Laguna Beach because we don't have an obesity problem there because most people who live there are very active. We eat very well. I mean, we eat, you know, kind of the way the rest of the United States is starting to eat now, where it's, you know, we had in the 70s, we had a thing called the Stand, which, you know, was doing juicing and all of these vitamins, you know, through fruit and vegetables. And I think, you know, I'm always thinking, how do we help people embrace this and not feel like they're missing something?
Of course.
Right. I think when somebody, you know, stops drinking or stops using drugs, it's not about not doing the thing. It's more about what are you going to replace that hole in your life with something much better than what you were doing before.
Exactly.
And when you can feel better doing something else, when you can feel the improvement in your life, there's no reason to go back. And so I think with, you know, again, getting back to IM8, one of the things that we were trying to do is not just say, hey, this is better for you. Hey, look at our, you know, components and parts. Look at how this whole thing works in your life.
Yeah.
You tell us what it's doing for you.
Right.
I don't want to make a big claim because it's going to be a little different for everybody with the synergistic benefits. I mean, yes, we do have clinical doses. Yes, we are measuring this with, you know, with Eurofins and NSF to make sure that it has what we say it's in it. But ultimately, it's how it affects your life and actually makes your life better. That is the only thing that really matters. And it's going to be a little bit different for everybody because of those synergistic benefits.
Absolutely. I love that. That was powerful. So as we wrap up here, Doc, if there's someone listening right now and they resonate with everything that we've said, what is one thing that you can leave them with for them to take that step forward?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Thank you for having us here. You know, you have to show up for yourself. Life is not easy, but you have to show up for yourself. You have to make sure that you're eating nutritiously. This is not a solution for that. So you've got to get rid of the ultra processed foods. You've got to eat more vegetables and fruits because of, like we talked about, some of the modern day farming techniques. Using a supplement like IM8 to close those nutrient gaps is very important.
Right.
And then everyone wants to feel a little bit better than just average. And so then you have those additional ingredients, and they're like the CoQ10 to really help that energy and that support of the body. And so I really feel that would be my biggest message is being sure to just move the body regularly, avoid those toxic substances, really take, you know, interest in getting adequate sleep. And I just don't think enough people put value on health until they've had health adversity strike.
Right.
So you want to be proactive and stay healthy for the rest of your life. Don't wait for a diagnosis to come your way. Do that before the case.
Absolutely. David, you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I don't think there's a way to top Don Mussallem. So I'm just gonna say thank you for having us today. It's been really powerful. I love listening to your podcast. You know, there's so many new ways to live healthier that we're discovering. And I think what's sort of exciting about the Maha movement is there's no stone left unturned. You're looking broadly, you're digging deep, you're finding some things that can really help people and allowing people to discover these new paths to health and wellness that maybe we didn't know about before. And that's the best part of living in 2025.
I love it. I love it. And where can people find you guys?
Well, so im8health.com is our website for IM8, and we're IM8 Health on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok.
All right. So, guys, it was a pleasure having you guys on the podcast. And we're definitely going to share all of this and all the links with everyone here. And I'm excited to see what there is to come. And I know there's a lot to come with IM8, and we're all going to stay tuned to figure it out.
Thank you, Sam.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sam.
Yeah. Guys, as you guys heard, Doc said it, you got to show up for yourself. If not, you're going to fall in that whole reactive portion of medicine. You have to be proactive. Show up. Make sure you follow these guys. Look at the product. There's a lot of science behind it, and they got a lot of great things cooking. All right? Make sure you follow, subscribe, tap, share, do all that fun stuff, and we'll see you for the next one.